Welcome back to the DB990 restoration. My name's Barry. Well, what a beautiful day. It's a bit windy, a bit cold, but we'll survive. What's the plan for today? The plan for today is we're going to start reassemble the PTO. Let's crack on. So we're out here today. We're going to quickly put these bearings in today. There's the two cup bearings going to go inside here. The two cup bearings are going to go into here. The large bearings are going to go into here. I'm going to speak to me suppliers tomorrow. I don't think I'm going to reuse the bearing that was in there. I think I'm going to order a new one, and possibly at the same time we'll inquire about a couple of replacements of these. We'll see what it's like. As you see, I've put both the cheek plates back on, put the spacers back in. That was just purely and simply to stabilise the casting while I'm working on it. So let me get set up. What we've got here, we've got a 14mm bolt, two cheek plates, cup bearing, nut, little thrust washer, and some spanners and sockets. It's freezing today, so we're going to have a look in here. I'm going to pull these bearings in. Right, let's get set up for this. Right, what we've done here, we've got the cup just entered in the housing. We've got the thrust bearing on here. We've got it all lubed, we've got the thread lubed just about. Right. Right, now we'll have a look where we are with that. See how far we're in. Not quite flush. What I'm going to do though, I'm going to take that off. I'm going to check this for size, because the corner of this is stopping me getting right in. So we'll turn it around. Put the big diameter in. Set it all back up again. I'm sure these castings weren't made for people with big hands. Not a lot of space in here. We need to make sure we get that aluminium cup. There's a nick in this pinion here. just need to make sure that we get the aluminium the right side of it. Don't want it binding up. Right, we'll go again. Squeeze that in until it's flush. There we go, job done. That in there, stop any little accidents happening. Right, number 2 cup bearing. Here we go. Slightly different in its design. It's got a plastic cage in it. It's going in the same way. So this is what we're doing. Thrust bearing up against the head, cheek plate on in order to push bearing on. We'll pop that in the hole there. We'll put it in the hole. We will lube the hole. Nice bit of lube in there. We'll oil that once I've got it in position. That in there, plate on, nut on. I can't see a lot else getting done today. It's getting too cold. Plan's going to be get these 3 bearings in, and then I might get into the garage and we'll think about possibly doing the seal in the back plate. Okay, put wipe down, bit of lube on that shell. Okay, here we'll go again. 22 mil on. they've gone in nice and easy, and quite happy that they've gone in straight, and I'm pleased I haven't had to hammer them in. I don't like hammering bearings. Right, let's give you a quick look at where we're at. So that one's in. So both roller bearings in. You see, that's all just bare steel in there. What I'll do is I'll wipe that oil around there with my hands, and that'll just stop it corroding off. Right, next one, big bearing at the top. I'll get that. Right, I'm going to pop this bearing in. We're going to bit of lube on that. Give it some whiz. What bearing? 54 quid's worth. Oh, there's a drop of rain. You knew that was going to happen today, even though it's not forecast. So, oh, didn't need the hammer. Didn't need the hammer. There's me packaging away all over the place. That's how cold it is today. Give that a bit of lube. The wax that's protecting it that's it. The wax that's protecting it had gone hard. That's it. Now I know these are in the gearbox and they're going to get splashed with oil. It's going to get down rammed with grease and all. Get some grease into that needle bearing in there. Okay. There we go. So that's as much as we're going to do with this today. Look what turned up in the post. My new little quarter steel balls. So that's it for this end of the job. We're going to knock that down. I'm going to get that cover and we will put the seal into the back, and I also need to knock in the two little holes for the dowels that go into here, into the gasket. So that will get cleaned up here a little bit. We'll get this sorted out and we'll get back to you in a minute. Right, we'll quickly pop these little holes in here. There's one. Just make sure that everything's still lined up. And we'll find that other hole and we will knock that hole in. There we go. That's that done. We'll dig them out with an O-ring pick in a minute. The seal. What size have we got for the seal? That'll do. Bit of lube on the edge of the seal. Bit of lube in the hole. Pop that into there. Now this isn't going to take an awful lot of putting in here. I felt the way it went into there would almost get, if you push decently with your hand, you'd probably get it in. And we'll check in here. You can see the oil being squeezed out. That's home, that's good. Pop that down there. We'll get a bit of lube on my fingers, and we'll just go around the bare steel in there, make sure the steel's covered, stop it corroding again. Right, I think that'll do for the moment. Keeps trying hard to rain. I'll get this wiped out. I think that'll do for this for today. Monday morning we need to speak to somebody about this bearing, find out what we're going to do, get a replacement for that, and then we can get the shafts put in, the gears back in, get it built up. I haven't painted the heads of these bolts because the intention is when it comes to, this will go back on the tractor. When it comes to get painted, these will come back off so we can get in here and in here with the paint, and they'll get a separate coat of paint, and then it'll all go back together. Alright, I'm not going to bother putting, I'm not going to put those back in because I'm going to Loctite those into the housing here. I'm not going to put them back in at the moment. I'm going to wait till we've got this all rebuilt because I don't want them in the way when I'm fiddling around in here trying to get gears and everything back on to the drive shafts. Okay, next job. Right, another little job we'll crack on with today. It's just been snowing there. I'll try and get everything wrapped up and put away before it continues. Give these a wipe. Now if you look on them, you'll see there's the snow again. That was the inside. You can see where the bearing's been. Okay, so we're going to put that back on the inside. Pop that into there. Check it, make sure it's in, make sure it's home. Nice new bearing. I'm going to whack a load of grease into this, even though, as I say, it's going to be in the gearbox, but this is going to be on the other side of the gearbox. Force the grease through there. You can't get proper grease packers, but your hand's just as good. Just as easy. Make sure that goes all the way in. This grease will probably get washed out with the oil over time, but in the meantime, because again we don't know how long this is actually going to sit still before it gets put back to life. Give everything a whiz. Pop that into there. Now, let's have a look. Put one of these on. If you remember, this bearing was slack anyway when we knocked it out. We're just using the brass drift. In fact, it's just literally fallen into the hole there once it was lined up. Second clip. Again, you can look at that. You can see where the bearing's been, and you can see which side's been out. So I'm going to put the back the way it came out. Right. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to use that. I'm just going to go around just gently. You see there, or maybe it's not. There we go. That's back home. You seen it jump when it went in. Everything's in there. Everything's in there. Good. Right. That's going to get put into the bag to keep it clean. Right, we're going to pop the output shaft back in. We're going to enter it into there and give it a gentle. Space that to go in, pops onto the shaft. There's our gear wheel. First gear wheel to go in. That'll go. This could be. Go. First, up Daisy, no, in a minute. Can I do it that way? It's got to come there, that's it. So you've got to put the wheel in to this side of the selector fork because you cannot get it back. So the selector fork sits in between the two gears. So now, next gear wheel. There we go. All I've got to do now is line the bearing up at the back. We'll pull the cup out for the moment. It. Now we'll slide the core back in. There we go. Check that for clearances. Right, I've just had to wire brush that a little bit. There was a bit of I think it was old Loctite was stuck on it. What I'm going to do, I'm going to drop a Loctite on it, just a drop, pop it So there we go. First part of the gearbox back together. As you can see, I've oiled all this in here, because that was all just bare steel where they've been cleaned. Didn't want to corroding up again. Right, that'll do for today, I think. Right, we'll now put in the input shaft. Wow, wind's picking up. So even though I've got a bit of a hedgehog thing on my microphone, you might be getting an awful lot of wind noise. Sorry about that in advance. Okay, shaft goes in that way, gear goes on that way, circlip on there, circlip on there. We pop the gear on there. K-clip. There's a right and a wrong way with these K-clips. If you look at them, they're dished. The dish, which is this side, that's going that way. This dish, this side goes to the gear. No, sorry, it doesn't. It goes that way to the bearing, because that is the inside of the bearing. So it'll go that way to the bearing. When it goes through, it tensions itself. Right, let's have a okay. These pliers are a better design for what we're doing. In, just make sure everything's in and it's home. Offer it up to the back bearing. Now we're going to have to lift this because the inner race for the roller bearing, the needle bearing in here, is already on the shaft. So right, what happened there was that bearing is such a slack fit, it's popped out. But it actually might be better that way. Now, let's have a look. Pop that on there. There, we'll get that started in that needle bearing there. Okay. Right. I'm going to do, got a little disc. because we need to push the centre in. Can't really do it with that one. Take the bolt out. I'll go on there like that. We'll get to the core. I need a counterweight on this side. I shall go and seek my beautiful assistant. Back in a moment. Right. You just push on that really hard. Are you right? Really hard. Right, you lean on that. Come on, push it hard. Lean on it. Okay, let go of that.
Doesn't make any noise.
Thank you. Just tap the circlip, make sure it's warm, make sure you can select both the gears. Job's a good one. Okay, all we've got to do now, selector goes back in, intermediate gear for the pump goes in. Right, let's see if this works. No, it didn't. What I had to do there, and it happened off camera, I had to get a bolt. Bolt with a section in the middle that was threaded, cut that out, chamfer the end in a vise, put that into the middle of there with the chamfered end at this end, it was coming out this way, and a square end here. Just took the burrs off with a square end at this end. Then what I had to do was put a socket in here up against here with that in, then set it so that this piece of steel was just about to reveal the ball. Then put the shaft in till it touched the steel, and then give it a quick wallop with a hammer to shoot past, and that shot into the socket in here. As you see, what else I did, I put a little chamfer on the end of that shaft, because that goes the full width of here, so that little chamfer isn't going to make any difference. See, it goes right in there. That hole lines up for the little pin, the hold pin. That there, off camera, that has took as long as rebuilding all of that. Trying to work out how we're going to put that in, how we're going to keep things in place whilst we messed about. And it took that long. My camera's about to die. And my microphone's about to die. So I had to nip in, quickly put that on charge while I was sorting this lot out. Anyway, that's in. There's only the pin to go back in here now. I've got that sorted. There's a gear to go into here, the intermediate drive for the pump. We'll get you around here, set you up, we'll put this gear in, and that'll be, we're just about finished. Right, we're going to put this intermediate gear back in. We did the bearings on it before, if you remember. That goes in there like that. Tab washer goes on with that, because I've done this before, these tab washers, and you kind of get into them. Let's grab a pair of pliers. I'll just bring the edges up. Tab washer in. Nut on. We can tell which way the nut came off because it's damaged. Mr. Chisel. Isn't it funny when your batteries are dying how everything just seems to take longer? Right. That'll do it. So, get a quick check. Everything is nice up here. Let's have a looky see here. Right, there we go. We'll just get that pin put in there. Right, and then we'll get everything buttoned back up. I think what we'll do is we'll finish this here for today because the batteries are going to go, and we'll get everything charged up. We'll come back tomorrow and finish it off tomorrow. 100%. Back cover on, seal in, splash of gear onto the oils. Sorry, no, not a splash of gear on the oils. Splash of gear, the splash of oil onto the gears, and a bit of grease on the gear in the front. Keep everything happy. Okie dokie. Back soon. Okie dokie. So, putting the studs back in. I've got 3 back in. I reckon you didn't want to see 4. All I've done is double knotted them. We're going to take a drop of stud Loctite. I'm just going to put a drop in the threads in there, because I find that if you put it on this thread, you put it in there, this wipes this off as it goes in, but at least this way that's going to carry the Loctite through the hole and onto the threads. Just add a nip. Just nip them. They don't need to be, these aren't carrying an awful lot of weight. Right, there's our studs in. Before I put the studs in, the threads on this end, I wiped all the threads down with acetone. I've just given them another wire brush this morning, wiped them down with acetone so that I had a clean surface to get the Loctite to work on. All the holes, all the threaded holes on the casting, had to tap through them again after they got washed, just to make sure that they were all clean and cleaned out. Right, all that leaves it to do now. I'm going to prepare the back cover, get the back cover on, button it up, jobs are good. Back in a minute. Bit of a favourite grease. I'm just going to pop that. This is the seal surface that this seal is going to run on. Pop a bit of grease onto there. Also going to put a bit of grease in there. I don't think you can ever have too much grease. Well, you can, because you can burst the seals, but I like a bit of grease on everything. Okay, what I've done here, I've got my gasket that we made, coated both sides with well seal, stuck it onto the casting. Now I've got my dowels in, 2 little dowels in, and now we're going to offer it up So I've been a bit exuberant with the weld seal. Two ticks, I get my little soft-faced hammer, because it'll just be just the dowels. If you rotate that as you put it in, it'll go in without kinking the face. And it's just purely and simply the dowels that's stopping that. Right, what I'm going to do, we'll grab the other nuts and washers and we'll tighten this up. Just give these a bit of a wipe. All the nuts have had a wire brush again this morning, and all the nuts have been degreased with acetone, because as soon as we get this done, I'm going to get my little hand brush out and I'm going to quickly put a touch of primer onto these nuts to stop them going rusty. The big ones don't matter, they can go surface rust again because they're coming out, like I said, to get the whole job painted when it's back as a tractor. Right, but these are going to get, because this will not be coming off again obviously, so this is going to get a coat. So just tighten, cross pattern here. Make sure this tightens down nice and evenly, nice and flat. The dowels will keep it in location for your seals. Just give it a and you'll see it start to squeeze. There's not a lot of pressure on this as a unit on this end of the housing. This doesn't take any great pressure. Right, little washer. This is the end of our selector shaft. So lock our selector in place. That'll balance off the top there. Okay. Right, just nipped. And then finally, I've already filled this hole with grease when I put the pin in, but I'm going to cap it with grease. So, I know the casting's going to be sitting on top of there, just to stop any more rubbish going down, just in case it has to come off. Right, I want a drop of cleaning fluid and we'll get this cleaned up. It's got to be nice and shiny, isn't it? Spent a lot of time on it, so might as well do a good job of it at the end of the day. Okay, just have a last look in there to make sure that the seal hasn't inverted. Everything's looking good. Happy. Right, all we've got to do now, the selector lever will get fixed and going to cut that off, tidy all the welds up, re-weld it properly so that it looks decent, and hopefully that is it. So there we are, PTO sorted, back together, everything done. Right, well that's it for the minute for the PTO. As I say, I'll bring it back in. It looks like it's going to rain outside today. I'm going to bring it back in. I'm going to wipe those nuts off again. We're going to put a bit of primer on them, get them sorted out, get everything cleaned up, and then it can get wrapped up and put away. Okay, so the bearings that we're putting in, right, just to give you a reference on the bearings so that if you need the reference numbers you can order your bearings in advance, because to do that PTO without having to do the filament, if you have the parts available to you next to you on the workbench, it'll probably be a reasonable morning's work. That's all it'll be. It's not an enormous task if you have the parts there. Right, these two bearings, these were HMEC, that's Hotel Mike Echo Charlie, and the designation on the bearing, that was the name of the manufacturer. The designation on the bearing was Bravo Alpha 2812. Alright, 2812. They were the open cup bearings. From my bearing supplier, they were less than £6 each. I'm tempted to say about £5.70 something. That's, you know, they are not expensive bearings. Two of those. This little bearing, it's a FAG manufactured bearing. Designation number is 6205. 6205. This was the bearing that sat in the middle of the intermediate gear wheel for the hydraulic pump. This was our expensive bearing. This is the bearing that came off the back of the input shaft, one with the large snap ring on it. It's a Hoffman bearing. It's Mike Juliet 1 1/8 November Romeo. Apparently the November Romeo stands for the fact that it has a snap ring around the outside. That bearing, I paid £53, £54 for that one bearing. Yeah, that was an expensive one. This one, bigger bearing, SKF bearing. This was the bearing on the output shaft. I was going to reuse the original bearing until I did actually rebuild the PTO with the original bearing in. The instant I spun the output shaft, the noise was, it's something that gets to you, and when the tractor was fully rebuilt you would hear that bearing every single day of your life. When you turned it in your hand, it felt, when I washed it and cleaned it and greased it, it felt smooth, it felt okay. There was no play, there was no noise. However, when you put the weight of the gears and the shaft into the bearing, it was making a noise. So, went to my local bearing supplier and I got SKF 6307 November Romeo Juliet. And apparently again, the November Romeo means that it's got the snap ring on it. Alright, that one, which was a bigger bearing than that one, was 33 quid. What does that tell you about that one? Different suppliers, but what does that tell you about that one? Probably I've been ripped off with it. However, so that was the five bearings went in. Two of those, one of everything else was. 5 bearings went in. Probably in total 100 quid's worth of bearings. But I can turn that now, it's nice and quiet. When it goes on the tractor, it'll be nice and quiet. The PTO will be left totally engaged, and it will be moved from high to low on a regular basis once the tractor is put back together, because I just want to make sure that it keeps moving, that it doesn't seize up, and it'll not with the amount of grease we're putting in there. So we'll just, that's another little job off our list, isn't it? We're getting there with that one. We've got to make a gasket for the top. On the PTO where it's open, there I have a steel plate that fits on there. Some of the parts diagrams show a gasket rather than the steel plate. I'm going to make a gasket anyway where the steel plate fits the casting, and it'll obviously have to be that little eye shape that the casting is. So we'll make that gasket, we'll get the steel plate put on, and then we'll look at, do we need to make a further gasket for the draft sensing unit to sit down on top of that steel plate. We'll see how we go. I now have to try and find a cover, a PTO cover, because the PTO cover was missing when I bought the tractor. So we'll talk to Colin, see if we can get a PTO cover for it. Get a couple of nuts put into that casting so that the output shaft can get covered up. Alright, right, well I think that's, oh, something else to mention. I've just noticed that there my parts tray, an O-ring. Yeah, there was one O-ring on the selector shaft, where the selector shaft came out of the gearbox. On the outside was an O-ring between that and the packing plate, between the big side plate. So one O-ring went in into that casting that I can't remember if I showed you. I didn't, because I put the side plates on, but there's an O-ring behind that side plate. That's it. Right, quick amendment. Remember this? Aye, well, I found it. I was busy cleaning up after I put everything away, after I painted the nuts. Busy putting all my stuff away, wiping down my magnetic tray. Little D10 ball that we thought we'd lost was stuck to the magnets underneath the tray. So at some point it was getting knocked out of the tray. The magnets had caught up on it. I knew I'd find it at some point, but never mind. I've got a bag full of 9 more 1/4-inch steel balls now, because I had to buy a packet of 10 anyway. So just thought I'd let you know. Right, well, thanks for coming back and visiting. Don't forget, if you like the videos, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe. We're trying to get to 100 by the end of the month, but hopefully we'll get there. But as I say, thank you very much for visiting. We'll see you next time. Don't forget, like and subscribe. Thank you very much. Bye now.